Hello and welcome. The world of Proteus is full of both dangers and wonders, but it can be a little bit confusing when you first dive in, because you're sort of just turned loose in the giant ocean with just a couple of basic tasks. And so, in today's beginner's guide, I'm going to go over the basics by starting a new file, and then explaining what I'm doing as I play through the early portions of the game. This is going to include crafting your tools and the basics of resource gathering, setting up your first base, completing the first adaptation puzzle, and crafting yourself a tadpole, a submersible that you can use to get around and explore further. Now, as a quick note, I'm going to do my best to give locations, but there's no in-game map, which does mean things can be a little bit difficult to follow. And so if you ever get confused or can't find a location, I highly recommend using an interactive map tool. That way you can continue following along with my progression smoothly. And so without further ado, let's dive right in. First up, head over to the fabricator. This is where you're going to see all of your crafting recipes. And it's a really good way to set yourself some early game goals, such as making a standard air tank, basic fins, the survival multi-tooler, scanner, and optionally, an air bladder. You can also see a lot of the recipes needed for the materials. So to make a battery, it's copper plus an acidic ryon pouch. You don't necessarily see how to gather these things though, which is where diving in comes in. So that's exactly what we're going to do, and start looking around for a few of these basic materials. Now, heads up, you're going to need a survival multi-tool to gather a lot of the stuff. So the first thing to do is gather 3 titanium. Most of the time, there's 3 titanium right around the base of the pod. There's 2, and the third's over here. Also going to grab this quartz, since it's useful for later. And head over to this little cave, which always spawns directly beneath the pod, and always has an oxygen tunic, to grab some copper. Titanium is common on the seafloor, copper's in caves and overhangs, so typically it's on the roof, not the floor, and quartz appears around coral. There's also a ryon down there, which is needed to make a battery, but that'll be a later thing. Because first, a couple other things need to be crafted. There's also a free chest. I'm going to grab the free chest. Since inventory space at the very start of the game, a little bit limited. So, the water slugs are used to make water. This is a pretty handy thing, because it gives 40 water, which is more than the basic water in the original Subnautica. Now, in addition, I'm going to craft that multi-tool. And toss the rest of the stuff in the chest. The fabricator can always just pull things from the chest anyway, so I don't need to worry about it. So the new goal is to get enough fiber and rubber to be able to craft the fins. Not going to worry about the air tank yet, that requires silver. Also, going to come back here and get some sacks. This way, 2 batteries can be crafted. Yes, I know, only 1 is technically needed for the scanner tool, but trust me, you're going to want 2. And so, because of that, I'm also going to grab a little bit of extra copper on my way out of the cave. While you're down here, I also recommend grabbing a little bit more titanium. And then look around for little orange flowers. They tend to cluster on the seafloor, and there tends to be quite a few right near the starting area. Yes, I know there's a base over here. Don't worry, we'll go there soon. But first, we're going to get a couple more important materials. Here we go. Each of these flowers has a rot sac in the middle, and you can cut it to obtain fiber. There we go. Before returning to the life pod, make sure you have at least 4 rot sacs, at least 4 fibrous pulp, and at least 2 titanium. If you don't have 4 copper and 2 quartz from your first dive, gather some of those as well. This way, you can craft the scanner, 2 batteries, one of which will be used in the scanner, and the basic fins. Here we go. Just going to make all that stuff real quick. The 2 batteries, going to be very important to have those. Craft basic fins. This will increase swim speed. Unpin recipe because I don't need that anymore. Craft the scanner. Also quite useful. Now, with the battery in your inventory, head back into the water. And the cable goes in two directions. One over here, one over here. I recommend going this way first. Not only does this provide a decent opportunity to get a couple more resources, but it's going to give you something very important. Just go along the seafloor, following the cable until you see this very large structure in the water. This is an angel's comb. And also, this is how you get further adaptations. You know, kind of like the weird thing you just touched a minute ago. So just head up to it and touch it.
Adapting alien enzymes to your stomach lining. You may now digest freely.
And with this adaptation, now you can eat all the food, which is really good because otherwise what you'd have to do is go around and scrounge for resources from the wreck of the cicada. While you're here, there's a small little base camp with a black box. We'll interact with that in just a second. First, get the habitat builder scan. This is important because you need 2 of these, and you're going to want a habitat builder pretty darn soon. After that, interact with the black box to learn a little bit more about the world and its story. Next up, head back to the life pod and follow the cable in the other direction. This is the first ruined colonist base. It's going to have some interesting unlocks as well. So first up, very importantly, right outside, scan the habitat builder. This is going to be one of the things you build next. Also, make sure to scan the biolab. This is a very important thing as you need it to customize your biomods. While you're here, go ahead and connect the battery to turn power back on. Now you can boot up the NOAA and learn more about the world. Fun fact, you don't have to rush through the cutscenes because you're worried about drowning, because the breath meter pauses while you're interacting with the NOAA. After interacting with the NOAA, head back over to the biolab and go ahead and equip an active and a passive biomod. I recommend Dash for the active and Sea Skimmer for the passive. The active dash is going to be very nice for more mobility and breath conservation. Sea Skimmer, it's fine. Sometimes it's okay, but it's not too important. Then go ahead over here, grab the debris. If you did not already get the other habitat builder scan, you can get it here. If not, go ahead and download the information on the programmable detonator to learn a little bit more about the game's story, and then head out and head back to the life pod. Next up, we're going to head to a new location to get silver to make the air tank. Before we do, though, a quick reminder, if you found the video helpful so far, get subscribed, that way you won't miss future uploads, and leave a like so YouTube recommends the video to more people, that way everyone who wants it can have a great start in Subnautica. If you look to the north-northwest, you should see some weird purple lights over on the water's surface. Head in this direction because you're going to want to go to a new biome to collect some silver and make your first air tank. Along the way, try to collect any of the other resources you're missing for both the habitat builder and the air tank. So once you get to this region, you should be greeted by 2 things. First, this weird growth. Do not go in here right now. The monsters in the viral bloom will attack you, and you don't have any way to deal with them. So to find the cave, begin here at a wreck, and then just travel north-northeast. You can sort of follow the line here made by this underground canyon. And then, very quickly, you will see an area up ahead where oxygen bubbles rise to the surface. This is an indicator that, yes, you found an oxygen tunic, and also you found the cave. So, go ahead, top your oxygen up, and then head down into the cave. There's going to be a crab. Don't worry about him. He's friendly. Unfortunately, there's no oxygen source in the cave, so you will have to be prompt and precise with your movements. But remember, there is an oxygen tunic right at the entrance, so that should be able to save you if you're getting low. In this cave, you are looking for 2 things. First of which is silver ore. This will be found growing on the walls. Second of all, copper. So, there we go. There's some copper, and also titanium, and also some silver. Also, maybe grab a couple extra pieces of silver, as that is somewhat unique to this region. Or at the very least, this is the easiest available source of silver in the early game. Silver that you need, make sure to scan the hydroelectric generator. This is going to be very important for powering your base, and you need a couple of scans. After that, it's time to return to the life pod. Alright, so back at base, time to craft everything up. First thing is definitely going to be the standard air tank, so turn those lucifer rot sacks into some rubber. And there you go. Now you can stay underwater way longer with 75 air instead of 45. Next up, the habitat builder. This requires glass, made from quartz. This can be found in nearby corals. Copper, which again is found in caves. And a battery, made from the acid pouches, which are extracted via the multi-tool in caves. And copper, which is found in caves. Yeah, caves are pretty helpful. Then combine all of these things with some easily available titanium, and you have yourself a habitat builder. But before building a base, we're going to want two more things. The other hydroelectric generator scan, and a power transmitter scan, because otherwise we're at the fickle whims of a day-night cycle for our power generation. So let's go do that now. Head out from the life pod at about 67 degrees, or roughly east-northeast. A short distance, about 90 meters away, you'll find this weird coral structure. By the way, you can always check the insides of the coral domes if you need some quartz, and a current pulling you down. If you enter this current, you will be sucked into a cave. But don't worry, this isn't scary. In fact, there's an oxygen tunic right here. And there's some cool stuff for you to scan. Come over here, and you'll find a Wakemaker fragment. This is basically equivalent to Subnautica 1 Sea Glide, and you're going to need to scan 3 fragments, so you might as well get started now. In addition, there's a scan here for a flashlight, which it's not the most useful device in my opinion, but it's still not bad to have. There's a supply crate with a battery, definitely worth grabbing, and a bigger supply crate with some copper and titanium. After that, you may notice over here a little light. They always say don't go to the light, but in this case, you absolutely want to go to the light. Because if you follow the light, you'll find a secret base. Now, in the base, there's a couple of doodads. You can scan those or ignore them, your preference. But the important thing is right here. Scan the biobed. You're going to need these because they act as your respawn point. You want to have a biobed, so you respawn in your base as opposed to respawning back of a life pod. Also, use the biobed. This will permanently expand your character's inventory space. Given how limited inventory is, you should do this at every opportunity possible. After you're done scanning everything in the garden, head back out, and then just take the exit directly to your right. Of course, if you need copper, there's plenty to be found in the cave. As soon as you exit, look over to your left, and there should be another little area here, which has a couple scannables. Most importantly, your second Wakemaker fragment. Before you leave, be sure to check this crate back here, because you can also get a titanium ingot. After scanning everything, turn back towards the cave. You should see a strong underground current issuing forth from the cave mouth. Follow it. Do be careful, though, not to get sucked in, as it may not take you where you want to go. And by that I mean, you want to find this little cluster of things just to the left. There's some really good stuff to scan here, including a power transmitter, a tadpole fragment, with the tadpole basically being the sea moth, a chest with a nutrient block, a power cell terminal, which you can use to recharge power cells, and, in here, your second hydroelectric turbine scan. So, with all of those scans obtained, it's time to head back to the life pod, get some food, get some water, craft any stuff that you haven't already crafted, and get ready to build a base. So now it's time to pick the first location for your base. Now, personally, I like finding an underwater current and building near that, preferably someplace where there's food and water nearby and not too many predators. And I have the perfect spot in mind over to the southwest. But first, I have loaded up this storage with a bunch of titanium, copper wire, and glass, used to make the biobed, some extra metal salvage which can be turned into more titanium, and all of the materials, i.e. 3 copper, 3 titanium, 3 silver, to make a hydroelectric generator, plus an extra quartz so that I can make a hatch on my base. Basically, everything that I need to get started. Or at least I thought I had grabbed everything. I totally forgot 1 copper here, which is why later when I'm building my base, I'm slightly short on materials. So grab 1 extra copper so that you can make your power transmitter. And so I'm just going to dive in here and head at about 247 degrees, so west-southwest. And I'm just going to go along until I find an underwater current near an Altera debris field. So here we are. That didn't take long. It's only about 150 meters from the life pod. Now, in terms of the exact location you build your base, that's going to be up to you. I recommend somewhere vaguely near the current, so that way you can easily and immediately connect power. So first thing I'm going to do, make a hydroelectric turbine. As a note, if you put it like here, no current, will not generate power. You need to make it in the current, so that it actually generates power. And from there, you just build your base nearby. And simply attach one power transmitter to the outside of a base, like this. And I'm just going to expand the corridor out here. I can always make something a little fancier later, especially since with different building modules, you're going to be able to make prettier things. Like this, good old entrance to my base. Move the portable locker out of the way, stick a hatch on it. There we go. Not much, but for now, it's home. And the reason I advise the hydroelectric power from the start is because you're going to be able to just build everything and not have to worry about your base losing power at night. So, a biobed, stick that there. A wall locker to store materials. Fabricator to make new stuff. And importantly, a habitat beacon. Because this way, you will be able to find your way back to your base. Welcome aboard. So, the next thing I'm going to do, interact with Biobed, and now I have a respawn point. If I die, I'm going to be back at my base. If you have any more resources stored over at the life pod, now would be a good time to transfer them to your new base. Also, if you want to make something bigger and or more aesthetic, you can absolutely do that. Maybe expand things out this way, spend some extra titanium, or go really deep on the building and make something that looks awesome with a whole bunch of glass windows. Now, with your base established, this is a good point to talk about food and water. The first thing you're going to want to do, see all these brightly colored moonfish? Catch one of each. So, a green one, a red one, and a blue one. That'll be used for your food, and you're also going to want to grab some fibrous pulp from pretty much anything that's nearby. There's a ton of stuff you can cut with a multi-tool to get fibrous pulp. If you need water, because of the base location, there are plenty of water slugs nearby. Basically, anytime you see this vegetation on the ocean floor, there's a good chance they're going to be hiding in it. The easy access to food and water is another reason why I like this base location. And the recipe we're going to use for this, the 3 Moon Tamaki, because this heals a little bit of health, it's like 15 health, and gives you 60 satiety. Plus, because it takes 3 fish, each time you craft it, you get 3 Moon Tamaki. Crafting these makes food and water pretty trivial, just remember to take some extras when you go on your adventures. Now it's time to get both the Wakemaker and Sonic Resonator so you can progress. Head out of your new base at about 22 degrees, or north-northeast. And you want to go about 80 meters until you see an air bubble rising from a cave. Once you arrive, head down into the cave. You'll see some nice stuff hanging down from the ceiling. Plenty of oxygen in the upper portion. There's oxygen in the lower portion, but you can't access that yet. And also, the last Wakemaker fragment. So congratulations, you can now craft a Wakemaker. If you need any copper or titanium, feel free to gather while you're here. Now, to craft the Wakemaker, you need some complex ingredients. The first of which is copper wire to make a wiring kit with silver. If you don't have enough silver, don't worry. I'll talk about how to get it in just a second. You'll also need additional silver, a basic battery, which you should have, or can use resources from a nearby cave to craft, and some grease, which just requires a lucifer rot sack. And you can find these directly outside your base. Craft some grease, and I'm going to craft my Wakemaker. Next, we're going to depart to get the Sonic Resonator scan. Also, if you need silver for the Wakemaker, Don't worry, there's some on the way. How many comments are there going to be about how I was calling that a Wavemaker instead of a Wakemaker? Make your guesses now, or just check the comments. Head towards the old habitat, which is north-northeast of the base. It's a good distance away, and it's basically in the zone where you originally went to get the silver. First up, let's head into the building on the far side here. Plenty of things to interact with, including black boxes and downloads. And most importantly, a Sonic Resonator scan right here. Next up, head through the doorway and into the adjoining room. This is where you're going to find the second Sonic Resonator scan that you need to complete the device. There's one last thing that you should grab before you go. And luckily, it's right here. Scan the processor. See, unlike Subnautica 1, you need to use the processor to make some more complex resources. After this, you can continue to scan things and explore. There's plenty of interesting things to grab, or technically you can exit. Before you do though, I do highly recommend checking out all of the black boxes here so that you can learn more about what happened to the people on Proteus. After you finish exploring the habitat, travel just a bit further north. It's really not very far, and you're going to want to look for a cave directly to your right. Enter this cave. It should be lined with some flowers, and as you proceed through, keep your eyes peeled to the entrance of another shelter. It should be right at the end of this linear passage here, so you kind of can't miss it. After entering, interact with Biobed. Congratulations, +3 inventory spaces. There are a few other scannables around the room, but none of them are super important aside of maybe the floor locker if you don't already have it. And if you need any copper or silver, luckily for you, the entire cave roof is totally filled with stuff. So you're going to be able to grab everything that you need on your way out. Just be a little bit quick about it as there's no oxygen source here and you don't want to drown. When you go back to your base, build a big square room. You need this to put your processor. Also, if you want to use extra titanium, feel free to pretty up the place a bit. So next up, make some copper wire, which requires copper, and some mild acid, which requires acidic ryon pouch, also copper. Then head over here and add a processor. This is the point where if you were still just relying on solar power, you'd be struggling. Because when this thing runs, it draws a lot of power. You can see the power output, or I should say power draw, of anything here. And this is 10 energy a second. So if I turn this on, my base would shut off, and oxygen production would cease, which is generally bad. So I'm just going to go out here and toss on another hydroelectric generator. That's what I really like about building near a current like this. You can just toss extra hydroelectric generators on and scale as much as your base needs. Now, before we craft the Sonic Resonator, we're going to take a quick detour. This will not only get us another inventory expansion, but also some salt, which is needed later when crafting the Tadpole. And to do that, head over to your NOAA terminal and ask it about Chap. After the conversation, you should have a new location marked on your map. It should say Black Box Chap. That's where we're going next. Just keep heading up to this rock structure with a single light on the outside, marking it as a habitat or settlement. Then head down into the cave. And here we go. This was Chap's home away from home. Now, the most important thing, interact with Biobed. Congratulations, your inventory has now been expanded. In addition, scan the repair tool. You're going to need this soon. And you also need 3 total scans, so it's good to build them up now. Before you leave, you can interact with several of the scans around the room. Also grab Chap's black box to learn a little bit more. But most importantly, on your way out, look for some pink crystals clinging to the floor or walls. This is salt. You will need it later. So grab like 3 to 4 of them. If there aren't enough nearby, don't worry about it. There's plenty all over the zone. Head back to your base and start cooking a couple of titanium ingots in your processor. After that, head over to the life pod. We're going to be setting out from there to the next location. Alright, so setting out to find lead is a bit of a journey, but this time you're going to start from the life pod and head northeast, which is basically straight towards the giant tree. Now, once you find this large wreck, there should be lead nearby. All you have to do is dive down to the sea floor And there we go. Now, you're going to be able to break some of the smaller nodes. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to break the larger ones. Yet. That's what Sonic Resonator's for. Since this is a bit out of the way, I recommend grabbing some extra lead and then heading back to craft the Sonic Resonator. Alright, it's time to craft the Sonic Resonator. This is going to be a very important tool both for gathering and a little bit of combat. And so with the Sonic Resonator crafted, it's time to put it to the test and also gain the next adaptation, unlocking a whole new area of the game. So stock up on some supplies and then head back due north. Remember those weird alien things you saw earlier that I told you to avoid? Well, now we're going to go poke some of those because we have the Sonic Resonator. So we're back at the viral infection. You're going to use the Sonic Resonator to destroy all 3 cysts. Watch out for the little shits though. They hurt. Your Sonic Resonator will destroy them, but because it's close range and they tend to move around a lot, you're not always going to be able to blast them. So instead, what I prefer to do is go directly after the blossoms, as if you destroy all of them, the parasites aren't a threat anyway, and then dip in and out using the extra time to get a heal off if needed. So now what you're going to do is exactly what the PDA tells you, and follow the infection back to its source. This will be in a nearby cave. You blast a few more cysts, deal with a few more parasites, maybe along the way, drop by your base to resupply yourself with extra heals if you need them. And after that, it'll be on to the main attraction. After clearing both juvenile flowers, head back to your base. You want to craft a couple of med kits, and also pick up some distraction flares. Those are going to be important when you're clearing the main blossom. Then head out and head to the location on your map, marked as an angel cone. Now inside you're going to find the same thing. Parasites, cankers, and a friend. A friend who's going to be very aggressive. That's where the flare comes in. Ignite, drop a couple flares, and then begin blasting away. Try to ignore the small parasites and clear the blossoms as fast as possible. Heal up with your medkits if necessary. After you blast away all the viral cankers, the central blossom opens, and you get a new adaptation as a reward for a job well done. Alright, now it's time to craft the Tadpole, Subnautica 2's equivalent of the sea moth. But first, you're going to need to scan 2 more fragments. Head to the life pod, and begin by traveling due south until you see a piece of rubble that's kind of just hanging off a cliff into the abyss. Don't worry, it's not that deep, or at least this part isn't. You want to dive straight down to find a tadpole fragment. This should be 2 out of 3. As a note, you're going to see a couple extra things unlocked because it's 3 of 3 for me. But don't worry, I'm going to get into where to find the third in just a second here. Now it's time to gather the last materials you'll need. This includes gold, sulfur, and lithium. Optionally, if you have some necrolase cysts that you happen to have gathered, you can actually get a little bit less gold and sulfur as you won't need them to make strong acid. However, I'm going to assume that you didn't pick up any earlier since I hadn't mentioned it previously, and also you technically don't need to. After that, you're going to make a one-way trip to get the last tadpole scan, along with a scout chassis scan. Technically, you don't have to do it that way, but personally I think it's a little bit more efficient, and then everything's going to come together, and you're going to have a tadpole with a scout chassis, which you can use to get around. So, to find lithium, head about 300 meters east-southeast of the life pod. This should be in an area where the water is quite warm, and what you're looking for is this cave right here with the funky plants. These funky plants cool the water, and they're your sign that you can find some lithium. As usual, use your resonator to blast it open, and you'll use this to make the plasteel ingots for the chassis. Last up on the material side, I recommend gathering about 10 gold and 10 sulfur. This is found in the same zone, the graveyard, where you're going to be interacting with the tadpole pools, and you get to it by heading due east from your base. The water will start to heat up, everything's going to start to look hellish. If you go far enough, you even find a wreck, though you can find plenty of gold and sulfur before you reach the wreck. So head out there, make sure you have your Sonic Resonator and the batteries fully charged, get blasting, harvest yourself at least 10 sulfur, 10 gold, then return to your base and put everything in storage except for the items equipped to your hotbar. This is because on your trip to the tadpole pools, you're going to die, and you may randomly lose some of the items that you're carrying with you. Now, I'm fairly sure you don't actually lose tools, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry, so I would personally recommend storing everything except for the Wakemaker. Do not do the risky thing that I did in my video and bring a bunch of stuff. Again, head out from your base and travel due east. As the water temperature rises, keep an eye out for a large wreck. This is going to be an indicator that you're about ready to dive down to the tadpole pools. After finding the wreck, continue heading due east. You'll also need to start diving down. This is going to be significantly more difficult because the derelict structure, aka the tadpole pools, is located at a depth where your oxygen is highly inefficient. Once you find it, head up to the surface for one last breath of air. Then dive down as quickly as you can. Don't waste time exploring. Just go straight through the door and immediately scan the last tadpole fragment, and then also scan the scout chassis. This is the last thing you need to unlock the tadpole, and you're going to get a really nice chassis to equip to it. After this, you can try to make it to the surface, or you can simply accept your fate. Don't worry, you'll simply reprint at your biobed, safe and sound, back in your base. So now that you have the tadpole and tadpole chassis recipe, it's time to actually build the thing. First, you need to build the stuff to build the thing, which is a vehicle fabricator and a tadpole dock. This will add 15 energy drain per second to your base, so you're probably going to want to expand your hydroelectric power as well. You'll also need a room to put them in. What I did here is I put 4 rooms together, and I put a big moon pool in the center. It does not have to be this big. I just like one this big because it looks really pretty. At this point, you should have everything that you need to make the tadpole. Maybe you ran out of something like copper or titanium or even silver. You should know where to get these by now. In terms of some of the more complex or rarer materials, that's why we covered earlier how to get materials for the acid, again the necrolase cysts, or the combination Fe processor of gold and sulfur, which you can use to craft your power cell, and once you have that, well, then it should be good to hit the button and finally craft that tadpole. Then, after you make the tadpole, craft your scout chassis. This should simply be a matter of putting all the materials through the processor, waiting a little bit, and then hitting the big shiny button. This is also why I like the die at the tadpole pools and reprint method, as opposed to grabbing some of the tadpole fragments that are nearer to the base, not in a dangerous area, but also don't come with the scout chassis. So we're going to go here, craft it, like so. And there you go, a tadpole with the scout ray. Now, as a fun little bonus, I've grabbed this portable locker. Yes, it's the one from the start of the game, because you can attach it to the hard point on the back of the tadpole, like so. And now you have some extra mobile storage. And with that, enjoy your new vehicle. This thing is super fast, very power efficient, and extremely maneuverable. After this, you are free to explore, and because it has a crush depth of 250 meters, there's a whole world of new areas, including some very dangerous ones, for you to explore. On your way, keep an eye out for dangerous aliens. Some of them will absolutely take a bite out of your shiny new tadpole. Also, look for more materials to gather, and try to find some extra scans, such as for the repair tool, because if your tadpole takes damage, you're going to need the repair tool to fix it. And so with that, congratulations, you've made it to the end of a video. This was very fun to make, but it was also a ton of work, so I hope it helped. You wouldn't believe the number of times that I thought, oh, I found the perfect path with the most efficient fragments, and then I realized there were other fragments in a different place. I'm pretty sure the path still isn't perfect, especially since the game just came out a few days ago, and also it's early access, so there's a good chance we're going to add more scan locations and more resources over time. That said, I am very happy with the end result and the pathing that I recommend. The raw recording for this was 4 hours, which sounds like a lot, but remember, the raw recording of a video also includes things like me having to take the trip 3 times because I wanted to be 100% sure that I'd given the correct directions and measured the distance, or me doing a retake of a section because I flubbed my lines and I didn't know if I would be able to properly sync everything in VoiceOver or if I had to re-record it on the spot. And also at one point, actually no, I think 2 points, I ended up going in the wrong direction because I wrote the directions in my script from the base, and then I set out from the life pod, because I had been doing it for like 3 hours at that point and my brain was cooked. In short, it was a ton of work, both in terms of the editing and pathing everything out, writing the script and recording the video, but I had fun doing it, so I hope it helped. That said, if you want to see more Subnautica 2 content from me, let me know down below what you're struggling with, what you're curious about, then get subscribed. That way, you won't miss it when I upload a video that answers your question. Also, there's a chance I'll just reply to your comment and answer your question there. Now, if you're a Subnautica 2 Pro, do be sure to leave some of your tips and tricks down in the comments below. I may also be making a tips and tricks video of my own with a few things that I've learned along the way. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today, so thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.